Just let me eat, cause I need a little full to be, cause I feel so empty without me. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Nah, 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 nah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Tonight's guest is Carrie from Carnivore is Vegan, or Vegan Killer 69, whichever which.
Yeah. So how are you doing, Carrie?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
I'm doing great. As you can tell, my friend here is coming from his underground bunker where he's hiding out from the liberals.
Nice.
And
And the Magaloons.
yeah.
Those
So
fuckers.
anyway, so trying to think. Oh yeah. So tell the audience a little bit about yourself, Carrie.
Well, I'm Carrie. I run, however you want to say it. Carnivore is Vegan on YouTube, but I don't have any YouTube content yet. I will in the near future. Carnivore is Vegan on Twitter, and Carnivore is Vegan on Instagram. And I am basically making anti-vegan arguments. Not even anti-vegan, but anti-non-meat arguments. Whoever happens to be making it. But vegans are usually the ones who make those arguments. So essentially, it's an anti-vegan page, social media, and I just have fun busting all their myths that they basically lie about and exaggerate or whatever.
Well, I mean, clearly you're just a paid shill of the meat industry.
Absolutely, I'm sitting here just wealthy as can be. I'm going to retire any moment off of all that money I made from them. I won't even have to take care of my pigs anymore. Just hire somebody to do that for me.
Yeah, so that is interesting. You are actually a pig owner. Do you run a farm or whatever?
Yeah, just last few months, actually about 6 months ago. Time flies when you're on a farm. We decided that my other half, my better half, he grew up on a farm, and his parents are getting older, and they're just having a little bit harder time taking care of the place. And we decided that with the events going on in the world, that food security may become an issue, and with the political climate against meat, that we better raise our own and have a fallback if things go really bad with all this coronavirus and the political situation. And just it seems like there's a setup that's going to have the economy not do well in the next few years, and we wanted to be ready for that. And we have the ability to move out here and work from home online, and so we did. And we, whether that's smart or not, taken over the ranch, taken over there's about 12 maybe working acres right now, but his parents own about 100 acres, and they're having to clear a bunch of land, and we're going to have to put a ton of money into it. So we're a few years off from being ever profitable, but we're hoping, just to have food security at the moment and have our own food. We have eggs out the wazoo and having to do our quota of eggs every day. And we have about 7 pigs on the hook right now and trying to raise some babies, and we're having fun. It's a lot of work, but it's really rewarding and very, very, very educational. Everyone should raise their own food.
So what's up with the title Carnivore is Vegan?
So that came about. I was just doing some research. I don't know exactly why I was looking at this, but word definitions are meaningful, and you have to use word definitions appropriately to communicate with people. And you can use words against people too. So, you have to, when you're talking to people, you have to all know what you're meaning in order to have any sort of communication. And somehow or another, I was looking up the definition of vegan, and on the Vegan Society website, they've actually since changed it, and I'll be doing a post on that very soon. The old definition of vegan up until just about 2 months ago was, quote, veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purposes, unquote. And that's just open-ended and subjective. It doesn't specifically state that you can't eat meat products, animal products. It just specifically states you do whatever you can to avoid basically the least harm. So it's essentially the least harm principle as much as you're able to. So I had found carnivore and I started doing the carnivore diet, and I thought, hey, I'm killing like 1 cow a year. That's about how much you're going to kill doing the carnivore diet on a diet of beef. One person is about 1 million calories a year is what you'd take in, and that's about what a cow is. So how could you possibly do less than that? And I started looking into crop deaths and all sorts of other deaths in plant agriculture, and I just thought that would be a great line to sort of catch people's eye, sort of clickbait, but true at the same time, antagonistic, fun, interesting topic of conversation, and I grabbed the website for it and decided that'd be my handle.
Who do you find to be the most competent apologist for veganism?
The most competent or confident?
Or both, I guess.
Either one. Oh, I mean, I don't know. There's just so many. Dr. Greger is probably the quintessential one. He's brilliant in a way that he makes all these claims and he never really responds to any of them, which is brilliant on his part. He can lie all he wants, and then he never actually has to answer to any of that. And he makes these claims like that you'll live longer and that this is the diet that will make you live longer. And if he dies early, then he never has to answer to it. How great is that? Like, you make all these claims that you just never have to answer to and never have to be right. And
for those in the audience who aren't familiar, what is the statistics on those who live long enough who are on a carnivore or vegan diet?
Say that again? What was the question there?
For those enough in the audience not familiar, what are the statistics on whoever lives longer on the vegan or carnivore diet?
Well, I don't know that we have great statistics on at least the modern carnivore diet. There's about 300 or 400 studies on Sami people, Sami, in Scandinavia, they're in the Arctic in Scandinavia, and they live about the same as their Scandinavian peers. There's a bunch of meta-analyses on vegans versus omnivores, and they all live about the same. It doesn't seem like there's any particular advantage to any one diet as far as I can see it. It seems like you get rid of the junk and you do okay.
Generally, I've always found that whenever vegans are, want to say that they live longer than meat eaters, they compare, your average vegan, like, in the hill vegan with a guy that's eating McDonald's on the daily.
Right. And I don't even know that there's any lengthy studies on that. For one thing, my big beef, if you will, about the vegan claim that they live longer is that there's essentially no long-term studies. Even the studies that they've done on them are about 5 to 7 years. That's about it. And then they extrapolate from that. But all these people are adults. Almost none of them have ever grown up on veganism. We don't know anything about these children that grow up vegan. There's not a single case study in the literature of a single lifelong healthy vegan adult. Not one. There's no cultures. So, for instance, the Sami, we have 400 studies on the Sami as carnivores, and so we can presume that they grew up as children eating this same diet, and now they're adults and they're doing okay. We have lifelong studies on these people. There's generations upon generations of Sami. There's generations upon generations of other carnivore peoples that we can generalize that this is safe. Where there's none of that with vegans. I mean, I have a picture on my website of 5 generations of meat eaters in my family, all women, all living at once. You can't even do 5 generations of vegans ever. Like, there are no 5 generations of vegans. And they say it's too new, but it's been around for a while. There's an interesting, not a study, but an interesting anecdote about Louisa May Alcott. She wrote Little Women. She's the author of Little Women. Her father was a vegan. And people will say, oh no, he was a vegetarian, vegan didn't exist back then. Well, the name didn't exist. The name vegan, word vegan didn't come into existence until I think it was the 50s or 60s. I can't remember.
So there's little to no difference between vegetarian and vegan.
What's that?
There's little to no difference between vegan and veganism, is what you're saying?
Well, no, I'm saying that he was a vegan, even though the word vegan hadn't been coined at that time. But so she was one of the very early vegans for a while until the experiment. They started a commune. Her father started a commune, and it was vegan. They didn't allow them to wear any clothes that had been made from animal products. They didn't use animal labor. They weren't allowed to drink dairy. They weren't allowed to eat eggs. And her father almost killed them. They had to stop this commune because they almost died. And, and that was in the late 1800s. So they've had 100 years, 120 odd years. Plus, they'll argue, there's other cultures there's other people that were vegan maybe before then. So that it's been in the lexicon, it's been in the mind of the world for many years, but there's no proof that it's even able to be done successfully. Not a single adult, healthy, lifelong vegan in the literature, in scientific journals. And yet they want to impose this on the rest of the world. When it's admittedly deficient, they admit that you have to take at least one supplement. Most doctors will say 3 or 4.
Yeah. That's always something that I've always noticed, is that they have to get a lot of their, like B12, I believe, is a common one that they get up all the time, where that's one thing that they have to supplement.
Right.
But I was saying, well, wouldn't there be a big difference in, like, say, popping a B12 supplement pill and actually eating it, like in an animal or something?
Yeah, I don't know if we have enough data on that, because there's not enough vegans that have been studied. So you take these people who aren't getting B12, and when they get sick, will B12 fix that? Will B12 actually keep them from getting B12 deficiency? I don't know if we know enough about it. I don't know if we know if the absorption is good enough, if the formulations of B12 are the same as the ones that we get in supplements. There's so many assumptions that we have to make with veganism that I consider it, because they want to impose this on the world, and I have come to the conclusion that B12 being imposed on countries, especially countries that aren't able to afford these supplements, it's eugenics. And that's going to be a controversial topic, but you can't argue that if it requires supplements. There is no vegan out there that I know of that says you don't need B12 supplements. Every doctor, every expert, every study says that you have to have B12. So if you're going to impose this on the world to people who can't afford B12 supplements, don't have access to B12 supplements, It's eugenics. You're going to kill them.
It's basically a crime against the poor.
Yeah, I really believe that. I really believe that, it's sort of the white savior. They're coming along to save everybody in the world, and if they hurt everybody, they don't care. They can just walk away. It doesn't harm them in the least, and they will have there's nobody to have retribution on that. There's nobody to call them out and make them take responsibility for that, and they wouldn't. They don't care. It's a form of eugenics from being probably not intentional, but out of being ignorant and the white savior, privileged person attitude that they have. It's a privilege. It's a diet for only privileged people, and even they can't do it. I mean, Miley Cyrus couldn't do it, for God's sake. She got DHA deficiency from it, and she's a multi-millionaire with access to any doctor in the world she wants, and any food in the world she wants, and any supplements in the world she wants, and she still couldn't do it. So what do you expect? People.
Mike Tyson couldn't do it.
Who?
Mike Tyson.
Jesus, he couldn't do it either. He got sick, he said. He was eating plants and getting worse and worse. So it's a form of eugenics, whether intentional or not, I don't know, but it's definitely at least unintentional eugenics.
I remembered something really funny lately, that a thing that's becoming really popular is called Impossible Burgers, where it's plant-based burgers.
They are impossible. They taste nothing like the actual Whopper, and it's just...
You're braver than me for trying them.
I'm brave for trying them?
Yeah.
Anyway, what were you saying?
But yeah, it's basically... The Impossible Burger is basically, for people that don't know, it's supposed to be a plant-based substitute to meat patties. It's notoriously a lot more expensive than actual beef patties are.
Of course.
Just like everything else that's vegan.
Sure they are.
And that's another fun thing when it comes to it, is that I remember I was watching on your website about it, and you had said that in order to make they have to simulate the feel of eating meat in the Impossible Patty by some of the ingredients that they put in them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what you called it. The hem, I think it's HEME or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think that's sort of funny when you have to basically simulate the feel of eating meat, but not eat meat.
It didn't work. It's not a burger if you don't have the meat, grain, and vegetable.
Right, and it's 5 times more expensive. I took a picture the other day. I hadn't put it on on Instagram yet, but it was $9.99 for a pound of Impossible meat, and ground beef is like $1.99. So it's 5 times more expensive for junk.
Yeah, I remember they put some next to my my favorite burritos, my beef burritos, and my packet of beef burritos was like $5, while like a patty, 4 patties of Impossible Burgers was like $8, $8 to $9. And I'm like, what? And that is just, insane to me that they go that far with it.
Oh yes. Speaking of which, they say that Taco Bell have put goat meat. I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't really looked into it that much, but...
Well, what's funny is a vegan can actually eat a McRib because there's nothing in that was ever once alive.
Yeah, they're not bad though.
It's mostly yoga mat with barbecue sauce on it.
If you want really good ribs, go to a Chinese restaurant. They have the
Oh,
best.
yeah. No.
And duck. Oh, they know
best.
make duck.
And dog.
Yeah, they literally do eat dogs and cats.
I've never had dog.
They do eat dogs and cats over there. That's not a myth.
They do, yes.
Which, this might get me some, but I actually don't care that much.
I wonder what dog tastes like.
Tastes like chicken, I heard. Although pretty much everything tastes like chicken except actually chicken.
Yeah.
But yeah, since you said you're on YouTube, have you ran into famous YouTubers that are vegans?
Famous YouTuber. Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, I try to keep up on the on all that stuff, and not too much. Like, I don't obsess over it, but I'll watch vegan games once in a while. And you guys mentioned Cosmic Skeptic and a couple of other people. So I try to keep up to some extent, but they're just all a bunch of clowns, and I just like tearing apart their arguments. But
Yeah,
otherwise,
Cosmic in particular seems to get the idea that the whole new atheism thing's not really relevant in our dystopian political climate. Like, they have to ally themselves with a political left to stay remotely relevant. But since he's become a very vocal apologist for veganism, and his followers just jump on it because, hey, he's Cosmic Skeptic.
Well, a big thing that comes with is that the big reason why vegans tend to become vegans is they tend to watch these documentaries, these slaughterhouse documentaries, where you see animals being butchered, and like they'll keep cows, like baby cows, in a dark closet for months on end.
I know I know that's sick and reprehensible, but that aside, that's not really going to stop them from doing it. People are going to eat it. If you don't, somebody else will, and if they don't, then the animal dies in vain.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever seen those slaughterhouse documentaries, Carrie?
Yeah, I mean, they're totally cherry picked. From my understanding, a lot of them are people that go to, they'll actually, there's all these, I don't know who funds vegan propaganda things, but they have more money than Big Meat, obviously, because none of us get financed by Big Meat to talk about anything. But there's some big money that finance vegans. I'm not sure who does it, but anyway, they will get them into, there's groups, there's activist groups, vegan activist groups that will help them do resumes and things like that to get into slaughterhouse and work in slaughterhouses and farms and things like that. And they'll work there for however long it takes to get this footage. So they'll often spend months and months and months and months and months at these farms or slaughterhouses to get like a minute of video of some asshole being a jerk to cows. And then they're like, oh, that's the whole entire movement, and that's how slaughterhouses work. When it took forever to get that footage, and it was a minute long, and it was one guy who was an ass. So that's what it's all based on, is just shock value. They just want you to believe that that's how every animal is treated, and how every animal dies, and how every animal's life is, when really that's like 0.111% of all the factory farmed animals out there. And I'm not for factory farming. I don't like the idea of it, especially chicken and pigs are the big ones, because they're basically in confinement most of their lives, if not all of their lives. And I don't know any meat eaters that want that to continue, and that would be great if we could change that. But beef confined feeding operations aren't that bad. Cows in the US, and I believe most of the world, actually only 7% of cows in the entire world are grain finished, which is the confinement operations. And I believe almost 100% of all cows everywhere in the world are grazed for 90% of their lives. And the ones that are in confined feeding operations, those are just grain finished. So they spend 90 to 100 days, 90 to about 120 days on the confined feeding operations where they give them grains until they get to be slaughtered. But they are raised on operations like ours, just, little mom and pop operations. And then they go from there after having grazed and nursed their mom for 6 months. We have 600-pound cows that are still nursing their mom. Then once they're adults, then they send them to an auction. And in rural areas, there's auction houses everywhere. And we have one, an hour from us that it's huge. It's really busy. It's a very, very busy place because people come from hours and hours away to sell their cows. And then that's where the buyers for the confined feeding operation buy the cows and send them to the confined feeding operations. So they're almost 100% of all beef cows. I don't know as much about dairy cows and how those work. I know the females spend their lives on the dairy until they're non-productive anymore, and then they go to hamburger. But the beef, the dairy cows, the calves, I'm not sure how that works out when they're bull calves. But other than that, all the cows in the United States are grass raised their whole lives until they go to the auction, and then they're finished. And those operations aren't even that bad. A book called Defending Beef by Nicolette Hahn Niemann. And when she wrote the book, she was still a vegetarian. She's since quit vegetarianism because she couldn't keep up her muscle mass and her bone density was failing. So she started eating meat again. But she was actually a rancher and a environmental lawyer and a vegetarian. And she was writing about how the confined feeding operations for cows are not that bad. And she was a rancher at the time, which is super funny.
Yeah. A big thing is that many vegans will say that it's sort of bad. Like they say that it's bad to, even in the best circumstance, to give a cow like the best of life and then just slit its throat at the end just so you can have a burger.
Just do it humanely.
Yeah. I mean, but I like to point out the fact that, like, I've said this is like, they'll eat a salad and they'll think that that's a blood-free meal, when in reality, do you know how many mice, and how many animals had to be killed with the harvesters and in the making to get that salad?
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of the whole point of how I got started into doing the anti-vegan shtick that I have, is because there's nothing that's deathless, and they try to say that there's something called veganic agriculture that seeks to be deathless, but they all fail. There's only about 50 of them in the U.S., and most of them are less than 2 acres. So we figure, about 100 acres of veganic agriculture in the U.S. So until they can develop, giant indoor hermetically sealed vertical farms, then their dream of deathless food is just a pipe dream. And they talk about it as if it's in the present. They try to trick you. Either that, or they're just ignorant of their own food processing, which I think is part of it. But they try to kind of trick you in conversations, and they say, oh, well, you're killing animals. Well, it's like, well, are you not killing animals? Of course you are. Then they say, well, we kill less than you. It's like, well, that wasn't the argument that you said. In two posts, you changed from it's wrong to, oh, well, it's okay when I do it, just not when you do it.
Well, I mean, they seem to worship cows but not care about mouse. About mice.
Actually, in India, where they literally do worship cows because God took on the form of a. That's how they viewed God. Their ancestors did, or so. Actually, that seems to be a common theme in the Neolithic and ancient world in general, where cows were seen as divine, or bulls more specifically.
Well, what's funny about that is that's an example like, how Carrie went into about how vegans try to go and, find a culture that's vegetarian, and they'll go to India. And I'm saying, many of them are Buddhist, and funny enough, Buddhism is not strictly vegetarian. It's against slaughtering, but we've had a Buddhist on our show, and they've said that outright slaughtering and killing an animal and eating it would be wrong, but not finding an animal in the woods and then eating that. That was already dead. So I mean, it's not a strictly vegetarian philosophy.
Even the Dalai Lama eats meat. He tried to be a vegan and he failed. Even Gandhi failed. He tried to be a vegan and he got so sick that he almost died, and his wife sort of tricked him into did a logical trick on him to force him to end up drinking goat's milk. And he got better, and he even took goats with him on transatlantic cruises to get to, I think he came to the United States or Britain at some point from India.
Well, like he never ate that much.
No, he never ate that much anyway, but he got very sick being a vegan, and he was ready to let himself die, but his wife talked him into having goat's milk, and so he took goat's milk for the rest of his life. So even Gandhi and the Dalai Lama couldn't do veganism right.
Well, you know who did do veganism right?
Yeah. And then there's a vegan. There's vegan Christians who will say, "Well, Jesus didn't eat meat." Well, yeah, he did. Fish is meat.
Yeah, that's the only food that he is specifically stated that he ate in the Bible.
Fish and goat's milk.
He was a Jew, and he would have followed kosher laws, and kosher law isn't vegan.
Nope.
You just can't eat pork. You can eat beef.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's, there are certain birds you're not allowed to eat, so. But I'm like, so it's not a strictly vegetarian diet.
No.
So I mean,
even the Buddha ate meat. He had, so the way the Buddha had it is that his followers, the monks that were his followers, were their habit. The way that they lived was off of the blessings of other people. So they would basically go around door to door and say, can I have some food, and get donations from people. That's how they lived. And the Buddha said, as long as you're not having an animal killed for you, so if they know that you're coming and they kill an animal for you, then that would be best not to accept that. However, if that was their meal and they're sharing the gift of their meal with you, it would be absolutely rude of you to turn down their food because it's not up to your standards. And there's actually some Buddhist stories of, I can't remember his name, but there was a Buddhist story about a guy who went door to door, and a woman who was an enlightened woman felt that he was not humble enough. And so she tore him a new asshole, and he realized that she was right and that he had too many food things. He thought her food was not good enough for him. So he spent, I think, several months at the fishing docks eating nothing but fish guts to get over his worldly desire for other foods, and he kept eating fish guts until they tasted like ambrosia, was the story. So there was no prohibition per se against eating meat in Buddhism.
They also like to point to China and say that most people over there eat mainly vegetables, but they're not vegans over there in the way that we would see them.
Right. There's no vegans in the world anywhere.
I mean, yeah.
Western
I mean, I've
countries.
always liked to point out that many vegans like to say that, well, we're no different than the animals, but yet they're only condemning humans and not, say, bears, who are also omnivorous. You know, basically, humans are the only omnivores that they go after that they say strictly don't need meat.
Yeah,
I mean,
good luck telling a bear not to eat meat.
That's what the grizzly man did.
yeah, I mean, I believe pigs, chickens, and bears are all omnivores.
Yeah.
And so, strictly speaking, according to vegans, they don't need meat to survive. But yet they seem not to have a moral problem with doing so.
Right. Yeah, I just had a discussion with somebody on Twitter about pig diets, and this woman who's a vegan is a animal nutritionist, which is weird because she's most likely formulating feeds for livestock. So I don't quite know how she fits that into her moral purview of things, having a career where she's formulating diets for livestock that are going to be slaughtered. But anyway, she was saying, well, pigs do just fine on a vegetarian diet, and I happen to formulate my own nutrition for my pigs. And I've looked into this research, and the thing is that yes, they can get by with it. However, they supplement them heavily, and they do not supplement, for instance, vitamin A with beta carotene. They supplement with retinol, and there's studies on that pigs need retinol, that they don't convert beta carotene to vitamin A very well, and they also really only feed them a vegetarian/vegan diet if it's the cheapest thing that they can do and still get by. So they'll give them, like, for instance, they supplement lysine because that's a limiting amino acid. And I don't ever hear vegans talking about supplementing lysine. They supplement retinol, and retinol is the animal form of vitamin A. They supplement vitamin D, which is use the animal form of vitamin D. So these pigs who are on a vegetarian diet get tons and tons of supplements, and whenever possible, they will add either animal fats or whey protein or blood and bone meal, fish meal. If they have that available to them at the feed company, they will always add the animal products, insects as well. So black soldier flies are a great feed for pigs and chickens. They will always try to incorporate those because they're a complete protein, and pigs need protein, and it's hard to get in a diet. And that's what the literature just talks extensively about, is how to get pigs enough protein, and it's very hard. Basically, they're given lots and lots and lots of soy. If they don't have access to dairy or eggs or meat products in the feed, then they're given just tons and tons of soy, and that's really the only vegetable that will get pigs to grow because of the protein content. So unless you want to feed your kids tons and tons and tons of soy, I wouldn't, use a pig diet as a platform for what you'd feed your children.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's always pretty good when it comes to how vegans have to pretty much supplement their entire diets because otherwise they would starve. But I mean, I've always said we tend to look at people that that are maybe not even vegans, but who take vitamin
Now,
D.
you're cutting out. You sound really echoey.
Oh, all right, better.
There we go.
All right. I mean, we generally look at people that that aren't even vegans, but that excessively take like vitamins C or whatever pills or whatever. We generally look at them as sort of as weird. because it does seem a little bit unnatural to do it that way. Another thing is that a big claim that vegans like to make is that eating meat will cause cancer.
Yeah, and that's a bunch of bullshit. There's no studies on that. There's some associations, and there's associations with meat to cancer because generally in Western countries, people who eat meat eat shitty meat and eat, at McDonald's. So they're eating the shitty, fries in vegetable oil that's gone rancid 3 months ago, but they add additives to it so that it keeps it okay. And they eat, cakes and pies and sodas and stuff like that. So there's an association. People who avoid red meat, for instance, generally probably are watching their health more closely and don't drink, don't smoke, those kinds of things. So yes, there's an association with that, but when you come down to actual high quality studies, that all washes out. There's no advantage. Plus, I have three, I think I mentioned that before, I have 3 meta-analyses on vegans versus omnivores head to head, where there's no vegan advantage, that they don't get, the omnivores don't get more cancer. And then on my site, on my Instagram site, I just put up a study not long ago of the Sami have been studied fairly extensively, and they actually have lower cancer rates than the rest of Scandinavia. And they eat almost nothing but reindeer meat, which is red meat. So if you take a culture that eats almost nothing but red meat, and they have lower cancer rates than the rest of Scandinavia, then, that's a pretty good test of whether it causes cancer or not. And we can fairly confidently say that it doesn't cause cancer.
Since you've been talking about the carnivore diet, I was wondering.
You're cutting out again.
Oh,
there we go.
All right. Since you were talking about the carnivore diet, or have you heard of Dr. Sean Baker?
Yeah, of course.
He's of course a nutritionist, and he advocates for the carnivore diet. He's sort of well known, and he's also, funny enough, well hated by the vegan community.
Despised would probably be a better word.
I know Vegan Gains especially goes after
him. You keep cutting out. Sorry.
I said I know Vegan Gains goes after Sean Baker a lot.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of those videos, but I imagine that they just all hate him because he's popular, and he walks the walk and doesn't just talk the talk. He's a carnivore, and he's got a 0 score on his coronary artery calcium scan, which means he has very, very low risk of heart disease, and they just hate him for that. He hates vegans, so and he's got a voice and a platform, and people listen to him. And interestingly, I just don't think that there was any real voices until recently that were criticizing veganism. I mean, I was a vegan years and years and years ago, and I never really heard anybody say anything against it. And until the last few years, I never really heard anybody voicing opposition to the vegan platform, maybe because they just didn't have much of a say in anything. Maybe they weren't getting anywhere, so everybody just kind of ignored them. But now they have a few people trying to say that. I think it's become this political hot point now of, oh, meat is causing climate change, and so therefore it's now become a political issue. And so now they have kind of politicians on their side, or they're convincing politicians to be on their side because of this climate issue. So, which is a red herring for their true agenda. But
well, I mean, don't you know that cow farts are causing so much damage to the climate?
Right. I mean, it's just ludicrous to think about it. Just on its surface, like cow burps, cow farts are destroying the world. Like, come on.
I mean,
well, AOC does have the IQ of a styrofoam cup.
Yes, she does. You didn't ask my political affiliations while I was on here, but I probably agree with you guys more than disagree.
What are your political affiliations?
You had to ask. Well, I actually really don't appreciate politics at all. I just think that we could get rid of politics altogether and be
in normal times we wouldn't be interested in politics, but these are not normal times.
No. I
usually don't. I tell people all the time that I hate politics, but politics loves me.
You can't help it. They're gonna shove it down your throat whether you want it or not. So you're kind of forced into taking a position to defend yourself.
Make politics boring again.
That'd be great.
I know. So I mean, it is sort of that is a thing that vegans will get on a lot of times, is that climate issues that ties to the environment. They'll say that, well, if we went on to a purely vegan diet, it would be environmentally friendly, and that would reverse climate change, and we'd be doing better.
Yeah, there's no evidence for that. I guess there's some studies that have said that, but then more recent studies, I have at least 2 studies that show in the first world there's no advantage. So, for instance, in the United States, I just did a post saying that dairy comprises 1.5% of all of U.S. GHGs, greenhouse gas emissions, and it's like that's ridiculously low. So getting rid of dairy altogether would do absolutely nothing, because they'd have to replace that with something, and that's going to be at least 0.5%. So it does nothing. And interestingly, in the study that I put up recently, if you look into the study kind of closely, the researchers did all sorts of scenarios trying to find a way that if you eliminated dairy from the United States and replace those nutrients with plant nutrients, there was no way that they could reduce GHG. Like he said, they just couldn't do it no matter what we tried, no matter what we replaced dairy nutrition with, what plant sources we replaced dairy nutrition with, we couldn't decrease GHGs at all. And in fact, in replacing dairy with plants to get all the nutrition, they had to increase GHGs in the model. It was a computer model. So, vegans saying that there's no reason for dairy. This study definitely said, no, there's a big reason for dairy. We get a lot of nutrition from dairy. You can't just replace it with plants and have the same amount of GHGs. So actually, dairy helps reduce GHGs because of the nutrition. You have nutritional deficiencies and or have to eat more foods and or more supplements in order to make up for that increased GHGs. So they don't take nutrition into account when they say things like that. It's just evidence-based.
I mean, but also, don't you know about how many cows and pigs have to be exploited in order to get?
You didn't hear a word you just said.
Oh, I said, but don't you know about all the pigs and cows that have to be exploited, especially the cows that have to be raped in order to get their milk?
Right, more histrionics. I mean, the thing is that they have to, the argument that they make when they do that is that they don't do any of that when they do. So their whole entire argument is just a game of pointing fingers and throwing stones from glass houses that make no sense, because they say, well, you take part in exploitation. It's like, well, you're not killing animals too? I have a math problem on my website, basically, an article that I somehow got all the data for all the dairy cows that are killed in the United States and how many calories that would provide us, including their milk over their lifetime, versus how many bees are killed for almonds and how many calories that gets us. And it came down to, the math worked out to be every 90 calories of almonds kills a bee. That's about a handful. And if you do pasture-raised cows, pasture-raised dairy, it would take, you're killing one cow for every million calories. And actually with dairy, it's a lot more because you're getting about 3 years to 5 years of milk before you kill the cow. So in reality, dairy would be the most ethical choice. And there's a funny thing is that I think it's Earthling Ed loves to trot out this graphic called the million calories graphic. And it's not even a peer-reviewed study. It's just by some dude, some vegan guy. And he did the math on just mice killed just at harvest for 1 million calories in different categories, that he didn't even do how many animals are killed for that. He did it by land use, which is ridiculous. But anyway,
I forgot. How many steaks do you get from one cow?
Oh, I don't know, but it's about 450 pounds of meat.
Huh.
Yeah. About 350.
Yeah, 450 pounds. But, and that doesn't even include like the bones and other things like the interior fat that they throw away, the fat trimmings.
A lot of people don't like the fat, but I like the fat.
Of course you like the fat. I've seen the women you've dated.
No.
What's that?
But yeah. But I mean, I also like to point out that, like they like to. I mean, like you point out in your articles about how, well, by their own logic, they're exploiting cows when they use their fertilizer.
Right.
In order to grow their their plants.
Yeah, fertilizer. Different fertilizers utilize different things, and there's synthetic fertilizers. However, especially in organic agriculture, they can't use synthetic fertilizer. They have to use organic fertilizer, things that come from nature. And so, particularly organic farming uses manure, bone and blood meal, fish meal, all sorts of things. There's several podcasts out there on people who vegans who worked for like an organic farm and realized like, wow, I'm really killing a lot of things by being a vegan, and it doesn't really make sense anymore to continue being vegan when I'm killing all these animals. I may as well kill a cow and have it be humane and have one cow a year. They're probably not carnivore where that's all they're eating, but they're looking at those ethics and those numbers of you just can't be deathless. It's just an impossibility of a pipe dream.
Yeah. I I also like to point out that many of these animals do not really value our lives either, so it's sort of a mutual thing.
Oh yeah, my pigs would eat me if I fell down. If I tripped and fell and hit my head in the pig pen, I'd be a goner in a matter of a few hours. They chew on me while I'm scratching them. They'll see if I move and pull away while I'm giving them back rubs. They don't care.
I've said this way: a chicken and a pig could watch you being killed and pulverized into their food, and they wouldn't care. They wouldn't budge. They would just eat you.
Yeah. In fact, pigs. What's interesting is cows, when you slaughter them, it's best to pull the other ones away because they'll kind of be affected by the death of another one. But pigs, you actually want to keep them together. They're more affected by you taking one away from the group than they are literally you can shoot one in the pen with its pen mate right there and it'll drop to the ground and they won't even notice.
Damn.
And if you leave it there too long, they'll start eating it.
Yeah, pigs just don't care that much.
No.
And they like to say that they're smart.
They're smart in some ways, but they're really dumb in others. So
I don't like politicians.
From my experience, I don't think that they're as smart as dogs. I think dogs are a lot smarter than pigs, although I haven't looked at the science on which one's smarter, and apparently
dogs have personality.
They claim that pigs are smarter, but I don't know.
Dogs have personality, so they're smarter.
Dogs have personality. Some like little pigs maybe have some personality. I'm sure like the potbelly pigs that people keep as pets probably have some personality, but they're cute. They're cute. I don't think that they're particularly smart. I mean, I can keep them in a pen with a single electric wire that they could just step over if they wanted to. They don't.
So, I mean, so you do your own farm, so I imagine that outside of pigs, you have other animals that you're responsible for as well.
We have chickens, geese. We had turkeys and slaughtered them around Thanksgiving. And so chicken, geese, cows, and pigs. And that's it at the moment.
Have you ever tried turducken?
I have not tried turducken. That'd be fun, though.
I haven't either, but I've heard it's great. I've never actually, funny enough, tried duck.
Oh, duck is fabulous. You should try it.
Duck.
Go to a Chinese place. They make fabulous duck. Crispy skin. Get crispy skin duck. Oh, so good.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're almost coming up on the hour mark, so let's see if I can get just a couple more questions out there. So, what really, trying to think, what are some plans that you got later on down the line?
Well, I want to do some YouTube videos. I just haven't had time, and video editing is not my forte, and I just don't have time to learn a new skill with the 500 new skills I'm learning on the farm these days. But I want to do YouTube videos. I have so many like in my head. I can see the whole video in my mind's eye, and I just haven't been able to get that into video format because of the learning curve. That's mainly it. Like taking down Lifting Vegan Logic. He has a great video on why crop deaths don't matter when vegans do it, but only when we do it. When crop deaths matter when they're fed to animals, but not when they're fed to humans. And just so many. I just have so many videos in my mind's eye that I'd love to get down.
I mean, a funny thing is I've known this woman, like, who is a vegan herself, but she eats, at Burger King, she eats the Impossible Burgers that they have there. And I have been wanting to tell her, it's like, you don't think that they use that money that they're getting from the Impossible Burgers to kill cows?
And they cook the Impossible Burger on the same grill, so she's getting animal byproducts when she's eating the Impossible Burger. So
vegans don't think like that.
I mean, when you have a group of people that they only can use their amygdala and not the other 99% of their brain, they really just goes to show you stuff.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, they're just everything they do is like knee-jerk emotional reaction, and they can't look into it, and they get really offended when you bring out facts that don't align with their ideology.
Burger King has better burgers, and McDonald's has better fries.
And Checkers has better fries than McDonald's.
What?
Burger King patties. Oh, sorry, not Burger King. McDonald's patties though are 100% beef. They're just beef and salt, and they don't use any vegetable oil to cook them with. So I have that on good authority.
Mm-hmm. All right. So since we're up on the hour mark, can you tell the audience where they can find you and
what's your favorite meat?
And what my favorite meat?
Yeah.
I love crispy skin duck if I can get it, but that's pretty rare. And most of the time, we just mostly live off beef because we have a cow and a half in the freezer, and we got to go through it. Last year, we lived in Wyoming, and we had a provider of grass-fed, grass-finished Wagyu. So we had a whole freezer full of Wagyu, and that was just fantastic 6 months of eating nothing but Wagyu. Oh, delicious. But anyway, I'm Carnivore is Vegan on both Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok. And I have the name on YouTube, but I don't have any video content out yet. But anyway, I'm Carnivore is Vegan. Come subscribe and see me there. I thank you guys for this opportunity. It was fun. Nice meeting you. You guys sound too bad you aren't in my neighborhood. It would be fun to hang out. Sound like people I could hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'd hang out while eating some good beef.
Some chicken duck.
Yeah.
So, all right, you heard her. Go follow her at Carnivore is Vegan. See you next time.
Thanks, guys.